Hi, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. It's so wonderful to have so many people from all different walks of life to participate in this webinar on high blood pressure and natural solutions for you. Just kind of a little bit about me. I'm a nutritionist here in Toronto. I've been working in nutrition for over 40 years, and I've been a frequent guest on TV and radio. And I also wrote the book called The Book on Confidence, A Complete Guide to Standing Tall on the Inside. And you're probably wondering, why am I doing a webinar tonight on high blood pressure? Well, particularly, I wanted to do this one because my parents both had high blood pressure, and my father passed away from it. And as a nutritionist and a metabolic balance coach, I'm seeing more and more people today suffering from high blood pressure unnecessarily. And I've been able to help so many people lower their blood pressure, give them the information that they're looking for so that we can make a huge difference in their lives. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to try to make this whole webinar tonight about 45 minutes long, and then we're going to open up for some questions. And then please feel free to send me an email, or you could text me if you have any questions following the presentation. I'd be happy to share that with you. So just give me a second here. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so we're just going to move this over here for a second. So understanding high blood pressure, is there a natural solution? So as I said just a moment ago, we're going to spend about 45 minutes talking about it. I may talk a little bit longer, as I have a tendency to really have a lot of information. So please bear with me, because I want to give you the best presentation that I possibly can. If you're not muted, maybe perhaps you could mute yourself. I did try to mute everybody, but I can hear one person. So anyways, that would be great if we could do that. So this evening, we're going to be talking about what is high blood pressure, the long-term effects of high blood pressure, the warning signs and the danger signals of high blood pressure. What role does your liver play in high blood pressure? The critical do's and don'ts, what not to eat, discover a natural solution, and any questions that you have. So thank you again for joining me this evening. So high blood pressure is definitely a disease. And if you've ever gone to the doctor, sometimes they will do more than, I know I had it done once. They did 6 tests on me when I walked into the doctor's office, because often people, as soon as they see that doctor's coat, their blood pressure has a tendency to go up. So they usually do 6 readings, and then they get the baseline of the average of all those readings. But if you have normal blood pressure, normal means that your blood pressure is 120 over 80. If it's elevated, it's 120 over 75. And if you have high blood pressure, it's 130 over 89. So who knew about this? Now, I know that when I was growing up, everybody thought that high blood pressure was truly, truly a man's disease. And you're going to find out tonight that that's a big myth, because so many people are suffering from that today. 1 in 3 have it, but they have no idea. That's why they call this the silent killer. It is the leading cause of strokes for people. 1 in 4 adults have it. And surprisingly, 22% of people between the age of 20 to 44 have high blood pressure, because we're really living in a time where people have more stress. The diet has changed dramatically over the decades. And with COVID and everything, it's just putting a little bit more pressure on people's lives. And we're all at home, so blood pressure can go up, and we'll uncover all of these issues tonight. So what is really the definition of high blood pressure? It's the force which the blood presses on the artery walls is much higher than it should be. So you can't actually detect this yourself. You have to go and check it out. You can walk into Shoppers Drug Mart, you can walk into some of the health stores where you can put the blood pressure cuff on and you can get your reading. But it is something that you do want to monitor, and it's something that we definitely want to just keep an eye on for sure. So some of the danger signals for people who are having high blood pressure, but they don't necessarily know that they have it, are nervousness, headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and nosebleeds. Remember, your blood is flowing from your heart to your arteries, to your veins, to your capillaries, and we need to keep that flow constant and healthy. And if there's too much pressure on the walls, these are the signals that you're going to experience because you're not getting enough blood to particularly to the extremities, and it's going to make you feel as like one of these ones here. Long-term effects, which we did mention, it can cause a heart attack, it can cause a stroke, and we know that a stroke is a little bit of a blood rupture in the brain, which we know can have detrimental effects. It can cause kidney failure, and it can even cause eye damage to the eyes as well. So here are some reasons why we get it. I'm just going to move this over for 1 second. Just give me 1 second. I just need to move this over here. Okay. So one of the reasons that people get high blood pressure, it's from salt. We all know that salt is delicious and it's great, but our our Canadian or American diet definitely is very, very high in salt, and we don't want that. So if it's the salt, your body holds on to water in an effort to dilute. This over for a second so we see. So to dilute it, the extra water increases the blood volume, so the heart has to work harder. Second one is coffee. There's two thoughts about coffee. And now remember, as a nutritionist, I really believe in things about balance. I believe that, it's what you do, 80% of that matters the most. And we need to have a little bit of fun. And coffee is not a bad thing, but there's definitely some things to consider. So caffeine can block. Sorry, just a second, just allowing more people to come in. So coffee can block a hormone that helps us keep your arteries widened, and it can also cause adrenal glands to release more adrenaline. So that's why it's linked to high blood pressure. The second one, or the third one, is alcohol. And alcohol releases something called the endothelium, which is a vasoconstrictor. And the last one, believe it or not, some of your over-the-counter cold and flu medications can increase blood pressure. And most of us don't think of these things having an effect on us, but they definitely can do that. Next, we have stress. We all know how stress constricts our whole body. We all know that we feel tightness in the chest. We can feel our heart beating faster. We can feel our blood pressure just going up. And when we have long periods of struggle and stress, it's linked to high blood pressure. Next one is the overburdened liver. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because clean blood is supposed to leave the liver and deliver to the rest of your body. The problem is the liver has over 2,000 functions that it needs to perform daily. And with a typical Canadian diet, which is fast, frozen, fried, junk, and processed, and the herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, and all the toxins that are in the environment, the liver has a tendency to become burdened. So when the liver becomes too burdened, then I'm just going to read you a little note here. 1 second here. When the liver becomes totally burdened, sorry about that. A sludge can build up back into the bloodstream and to the lymphatic system. And then what happens is the blood becomes much dirtier and thicker, which makes your heart have to work a lot harder. So think of a glass of water. It's very easy to suck water through a straw in a glass of water, but much more difficult to take a straw and take up molasses through that. So the cleaner the blood, the more hydrated you are, the cleaner the diet. This is going to have a great impact on not only on your blood pressure, but it's also an indicator of how well your liver is functioning. And it's something we often don't take into consideration. Your liver's on your right side of your body and it does need a break. Some of the foods that are really beneficial are, of course, are the dark greens, particularly the bitter greens like endive, radicchio, rapini, coriander, watercress, arugula. These are all great greens for your liver. Not to mention definitely having all being really hydrated. And when we talk about hydration, we talk about making sure that we drink between 2 to 3 liters of clean filtered water every day. to keep that liver functioning, because the liver and the heart, they have to work in harmony with each other. So the cleaner we have our diet, the liver's going to be healthier and your heart's going to be healthier and the blood pressure can go down. Obesity, this is a huge factor for increasing our chances of having high blood pressure. I did some research this afternoon and I was Googling hereditary and blood pressure. And many people, especially my clients, they all indicate that, it's in my family, it's just hereditary. It's actually only like 44% of a hereditary factor. The rest of that is our environment. And most of us grow up in a family that we have similar eating habits and similar lifestyles. That's where it becomes more hereditary. So I have 8 brothers and sisters. There's like a couple of them I think have high blood pressure, but the rest of us don't. So you either turn it on or you turn it off. It really has a lot to do with how you're taking care of yourself. We're going to talk a lot about this visceral fat, which is the primary factor momentarily, and is something that I really love to talk about because most people have no idea what visceral fat is, and we'll come back to that. Age, of course, the older we are, the less elastic our arteries are. And if you want to maintain good elasticity in your arteries, then it's important that you exercise. It's important that you have a clean diet, lots of water, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, and that you're even doing some yoga, because the more you stretch, the easier the arteries will remain more elastic. If we don't move around very much, and they say that sitting is the new smoking. So important to keep our bodies moving as we get older. Anger, we all know that when we're angry, our body constricts and we can feel it literally go into the heart or into the stomach, but it causes an outpouring of stress hormones like adrenaline, which is put out by your adrenal glands. So there's something called adrenaline and cortisol. So adrenaline is that burst of hormone that comes out of your body when maybe somebody cut you off in traffic, but cortisol is that hormone that is high if you're under a lot of stress. So if cortisol levels stay high, then it increases your chances of developing high blood pressure. So it's important that we all manage our lives and make sure that we have some nurturing time for ourselves, whether it's exercise, meditation, talking to your friends, and hopefully one day we can all go back to the restaurants and socialize again. And of course, there's a huge, huge link to how your diet is connected to blood pressure. So what really works? We have all this information now. We just run to the doctor, we go to the doctor, we talk to somebody, we talk to our friends, and this supplement or that herb or these mushrooms or this vitamin C, we all have an opinion about what works. And traditionally, medical doctors will give you something that's going to lower your blood pressure, but oftentimes these can have secondary side effects on the body. And it's often overlooked that when you do have a checkup, then sometimes they don't even ask you what your diet is. And that's something that, as a nutritionist, we work with people's diet and their lifestyles and their habits and their medications to make sure that the foods that they're taking in is the best foods for their body at that particular time, so that each person can live healthy and happy. I'm a firm believer that regardless of how old we are, we should feel like a 10 out of 10. Regardless of how old we are, we should sleep really well. We should have a balanced diet. We should be able to have some fun. But again, it's that 80-20. It's the 80-20 rule that matters the most. But what works really is something that's very interesting. Let me share that with you. So there is nutrition intervention. As I said, a lot of us turn to different, types of diets, or there's so many programs out there, there's so many nutrition out there, but the idea that nutrition has a huge impact on intervening with high blood pressure, there's a ton of information and a ton of literature that basically indicates that when we do have nutrition intervention, we can reverse high blood pressure. So I've been working with people for, as I said to you, for over 40 years. I've had many, many, many of my clients do the program that I'm going to talk about in a moment. And not only did their blood pressure drop, but they were able to actually eradicate all their medications and they feel so much better. And it happened very, very quickly. Once we made some few changes into their diet and into their lifestyle, there was a great change in their blood pressure. This is my favorite thing to say. We live in a world where burger is the king and dairy is the queen. We are living in a time where food is basically, I love this one too. This is my favorite one. We have 5 new food groups today. We have frozen, fast, fried, junk, and processed. If you look at this list, you'll notice that most of these foods are beige. They lack water, they lack vitamins, they lack minerals, and they lack fiber. And when you watch TV in the evening, this is what the food manufacturers are promoting. They're promoting all these foods to us. They do taste good. They have chemicals in there that make us want to eat more. They're addictive. Um, and yes, I would love to eat them from time to time. The problem is that they're playing havoc with your cardiovascular system because they're not feeding your body the nutrients and the phytonutrients and the minerals and the enzymes and the fiber that is so necessary for your cells. So when you think about your cells, each one of these cells is a powerhouse and has to be nourished. So, if you think about what your grandmother used to eat, 100 years ago, they were eating healthy foods like chicken and fish and nuts and seeds and grains. But we've gone so far away from that it's unfortunate. But now we have this diet and we have these crazy lifestyles. But now with COVID, I think people are spending more time at home and not necessarily going out to restaurants, but hopefully cooking better and eating healthier. So there's nothing really in regards to frozen. I mean, I will freeze some meat or I'll freeze some fish, but I'm a big believer in having fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. In the wintertime, I might buy some frozen berries, but the fast, the fried, the junk, and the processed, these are all really playing havoc. So think about it. If it comes in a bag, a box, a pickup window, or a vending machine, it's probably not food. And if it has to pass a chemistry lab on the way to your mouth, it's probably not food. Your meals need to be colorful. Oranges, yellows, blues, purples, greens. That's the food that's going to supply your body with the nutrients needed and necessary to keep your blood pressure down. Sorry, my little thing's not working as well. Okay. So when we think of high blood pressure, we also know that there's a huge risk factor of being obese, and the BMI is something to take into consideration. So BMI is a measure of body fat based on your height and your weight. And most people, because I have this incredible machine that people get on and they can determine their BMI, determine their percentage of body fat, and believe it or not, obese is over 30. So we're going to talk about that because normal is 18.5, overweight is 25 to 30, but obese is over 30. And once you're in that obese category, your risk factors for any kind of disease starts to go up. So the idea with blood pressure is to make sure that your body is not in this category of obese. However, having said that, there are lots of people with normal BMIs who have high blood pressure, but there's another reason for that, and we're going to talk about that shortly. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, size does matter. So if your waist size is greater than 40 inches for a male or 35 inches for a female, you have something called visceral fat. And that visceral fat, as you can see in this picture here, there's a lot of inflammation. So if you were to take a measuring tape and wrap around at the belly button, if the number is greater than 35 inches for the female or 40 inches for the male, then you have too much of this visceral fat. And this increases your chances of developing high blood pressure. That will lead us to something called metabolic syndrome, which we'll talk about. So metabolic syndrome is a name given to a series of problems, which is high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and blood lipid disorder. So things like high cholesterol. We now, as I said, because we have our diets been changed so much, there's so much stress, a lot of people today are suffering from metabolic syndrome. And this can cause even something called fatty liver disease. It can cause a host of problems, but it all has to do with the size of our waist. So it's really important to note that if we're going to be trying to help people or help yourself, take a measuring tape and measure at the abdomen, again, 35 inches for a female or 40 inches for a male, because once that number goes above that, your chance of developing all of these definitely starts to increase. Why does insulin matter? Actually, I'm going to go back for a second. Sorry, I just want to talk about something else. Okay. I also want to talk about the 4 types of fat. Okay. So we're going to talk about the 4 different types of fat in the body. You have brown fat, white fat, subcutaneous fat, and visceral fat. So the brown fat is the fat that people are trying to turn on. And I've noticed here, because I live in the beaches here in Toronto, that a lot of people are jumping into the lake in the middle of the winter time. And they're trying to turn on their brown fat, which actually can make you burn more calories. So having a cold shower at the end of your shower can actually turn on your brown fat. Babies are born with lots of brown fat, and that's why they're a little bit chubby. White fat is extra energy that's necessary, and subcutaneous fat is the fat that we can pinch at our waist. But the most dangerous fat of all is that fat called the visceral fat. And that visceral fat is the one that wraps around our tummy, which causes the inflammation, which is definitely related to metabolic syndrome. So why do people have metabolic syndrome in the first place? It all has to do with insulin. And why does insulin matter? You see, insulin is a fat storage hormone. And when you eat your food, insulin will go up. But the problem is the way that we're consuming our food today with the fast, frozen, fried, junk and processed food, the problem is it's elevating our insulin. And that can cause high blood pressure, blood fat abnormalities, abnormal immune system functioning, acne, ankle swelling, constipation, decreased memory or concentration. It also, high levels of insulin can lead to depression, fatigue, irregular menstrual cycles, irritability, sugar cravings, water retention, and weight gain, especially around the middle. So you may be wondering, what does that mean? Elevated insulin. How does one get elevated levels of insulin in their body? Very easy. If you woke up in the morning and had a coffee with sugar and a banana, your insulin is going to go up very, very quickly. Remember, insulin is a fat storage hormone, and that causes problems with insulin levels are going to be too high. We need insulin to get sugar into the cells, but we need to make sure that insulin is constantly balanced. The way we consume food is not allowing our insulin to stay balanced, and it's keeping insulin levels high, which is causing us weight gain, which is putting that visceral fat around our tummy. And we're going to talk about a way in which you can reduce insulin, which is going to reduce your blood pressure, which is ultimately going to give you much better health. And again, I just kind of come back to this. So that's the brown fat. It burns the calories and generates the heat. The subcutaneous fat, it supplies skin with oxygen. The white fat cushions our organs and contains the leptin. Leptin is that hormone that turns on when you get when you're full. And if you have too much fat in your body, your leptin will be turned off and you won't always feel full. And then lastly, the visceral fat. So when we talk about blood pressure and we're talking about metabolic syndrome, we're talking about this visceral fat. So it provokes inflammatory pathways, wraps around your organs, and causes problems. It wraps around your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your pancreas, and it's responsible for a host of problems, and we need to reduce it. And that visceral fat, again, is related to having too much insulin in the body because the diet for people is not balanced today. So what are the solutions? Yes, there are supplements. Yes, you can go on medication. But the one solution that I've been working with for a long, long time is a program called Metabolic Balance. You see, each person has their own unique biochemistry. Each one of us is different from all health perspectives. We eat differently. We have different requirements, food habits. We might exercise. Some of us exercise a lot. Some of us don't exercise. Some of us don't have proper bowel movement. Some of us are on medication. So metabolic balance is a program designed to it's created individually and naturally for your body so that your blood pressure can come down. And how does that work? So what happens is my clients who do this metabolic balance program, they come into my office and I sit down with them and we do a complete questionnaire. That questionnaire includes the size of the waist, the size of the hips, the size of the thigh, any medications that a person is on, any other things such as no gallbladder, or you've had, a problem with your liver, or you've had some surgeries, or you're taking one medication or four medications, or you have particular food likes or dislikes. And we also weigh you on the scale to find out what your BMI is, your percentage of body fat, how old you are, what your ideal body weight would be, because the machine actually can indicate that. So the more ideal body weight, the less the high blood pressure. So all these factors are taken into consideration. Then I give my clients a requisition for blood work. Now, this goes to Life Labs, and Life Labs works with Metabolic Balance here in Canada and United States and in 40 other countries around the world. Each client has their own blood work done, and we look and review 35 of those blood values. One of those things that we look at is your blood fasting insulin levels, and we also look at those liver enzymes. You've probably heard of alanine transferase, GGT. There's a bunch of liver enzymes that can indicate how well that liver is functioning, because remember, we talked about how important it was to have a healthy liver. So metabolic balance now takes your personal history, your biological, and looks at biological value of particular foods, and it also takes into consideration, any medications you're on and what is your desired outcome from this program. This information is now put and sent into the computer to the headquarters, which is in Germany, in Eisen, Germany. In Eisen, Germany, they take each person into account, and every single person around the world gets their own unique, customized, individualized program that is the best food for their body to balance out the insulin, to help them to lose weight and to lower the blood pressure, and helps with other things such as, hypertension. Pretty much every disease can be managed with this because it works to balance out insulin in the body. So the software analyzes them again, and it gives you the highest biological value food, the lowest glycemic index food for your body, and you get your own customized, individualized program. It doesn't take that long for this to happen. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, I've tried everything before, but this is very unique and very different. And all the clients that I've had, and I've had over 1,000 clients participate in this program, with this, they get, because they have this program, they get their own unique food list. It is a balance of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. It is not low fat. It is not high fat. It is not high carb. It is not high protein. It is the perfect balance for your body to make sure that insulin stays balanced. So you will get a protein and fat and carbohydrate at pretty much every meal. And if your ears are being perked up when I say carbohydrate, most people think of carbohydrates of bagels and donuts and muffins and croissants and French fries. But from a nutritionist perspective, we always look at carbohydrates as the fruits and vegetables, the main source of fuel for the body, the fastest way for our body to get energized. And remember, we don't want that food coming from a chemistry lab or having to pass, any kind of processing before it gets to your mouth. Then it generates a list of food for that individual or for your own self. So it's a very easy thing to follow. It's basic foods. There's nothing complicated about this program. It just gives us the highest biological value, the lowest glycemic index to balance out your insulin, to lower the visceral fat, which ultimately lowers the blood pressure. So, if you think about it, people get blood pressure, they go get a medication. But if we do it the other way around and really treat the individual as an individual and take in their health history, then we're going to get the results that we're looking for. So metabolic balance is very unique in that its primary function is to manage insulin the way nature intended it. Most of us today have too high levels of insulin. And if your insulin levels are high all the time, that is going to be a problem. So some of the rules for this program to lower the blood pressure are you have to have 3 meals a day. Why? Because you want to make sure that you have a constant level of insulin throughout the body throughout the daytime. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Secondly, you're going to have after each meal, you're going to take a break of at least 5 hours before you start the next meal. Now, if you eat between that meal, you're going to raise insulin. Now, when I was a nutritionist years ago, when I graduated from university, they used to tell us that having, 5 or 6 small meals was the healthiest thing. Science now indicates that if you just have 3 meals a day with only water in between the meals, your insulin levels are going to stay much more balanced. So we're going to wait 5 hours between meals. There is no snacking allowed. And the interesting thing about this, when you follow this and you start to eat from the meal plan that's created just for you, you actually will not be hungry and your desire or cravings for salt and sugar will diminish. It's pretty remarkable because once your fat, protein, carbohydrate requirements are met, you simply don't have any of these cravings. So you could have breakfast at 9 o'clock, you could have lunch at 2 o'clock, and then you could have dinner at 7 o'clock. But the latest you have to eat is 9 o'clock in the evening. Thirdly, we're not allowing any meal to last longer than 60 minutes because we don't want insulin levels to go up high. And why is that here? Because traditionally people have their dinner, then they go get a cookie, then they go get a chocolate bar, and then they might get something else. And then later on, 10 o'clock at night, they're in the kitchen again having a peanut butter sandwich. So that means between the time you had dinner and the time you go to bed, your insulin levels have been high. And if insulin levels are high, you're going to put that weight on around the middle, and that's going to increase your blood pressure. So it's only making sure that your meals last only 60 minutes long. Now, of course, if you go to a wedding, that's going to be a little different. You'll have the opportunity to break your program, but you definitely want to keep this into consideration. Number 4 is always begin each meal with 2 bites of protein. Now, when you eat 2 bites of protein, interestingly enough, you release something called the hormone glucagon, which is an antagonist of insulin. Remember, I talked about if you got up in the morning and you had a coffee with a banana, you're going to definitely have your insulin levels up too high because there's no protein in there. So if you woke up in the morning and you had some almonds and then you had your coffee, that's going to satisfy that. So you're going to start every meal with 2 bites of protein. I have a lot of clients who do this program, and sometimes they wait before the blood work is being prepared and the plan is being generated. And I can tell you almost for sure that almost everybody who waits 1 week between the time that we see each other, the time they pick up their plan, they lose between 3 and 5 pounds in that first week just simply by having these 2 bites of protein and following these rules. It's pretty remarkable. And in some cases, I've seen blood pressure drop pretty fast. You're having only 1 protein per meal. And the reason is every protein has a different biological value. So you can't have the same protein you can't have the same protein twice in one day. So you wouldn't have chicken for dinner and chicken for lunch. Now, why is only 1 protein per meal? Let's give you an example. Eggs have a biological value of 100%, which means if I eat an egg, I'm going to be able to get protein into my cells very rapidly. But if I have milk and egg, milk has a biological value of 91%. When I mix the milk and the eggs together, what happens here is that the body will take the food with the lowest amount of amino acids, which is the milk. Therefore, there is leftover amino acids from the egg, which is 9%, and this is going to lead to over-acidification of your body. Very difficult to lose weight, to lose that visceral fat around your tummy when our bodies are becoming too acidic. And you'll know if your body is acidic. Take a look at your own fingernails right now. If you have ridges on it, you're probably too acidic. Acid also can be felt with or seen with your hair turning gray and feeling bad all over without kind of a cause. So we really want to make sure we have 3 different proteins. And if you don't know what a protein is, a lot of people really don't. They get very confused. It's like eggs, chicken, fish, cheese, nuts, seeds, meat, seafood. These are all proteins. Things like, peanut. A peanut is not a complete protein. So it has to be mixed with a grain, like a whole wheat, to make it a complete protein. But then again, we don't want to do that because we're definitely just sticking to 1 protein at a time.
If possible, we don't want to eat after 9 o'clock. And you want to drink 35 milliliters of water per kilogram of body weight. That basically translates to approximately 2 to 4 liters, depending on the size of your body and depending on how much weight you want to lose. And that water needs to be clean, filtered. If you can get ionized water, we don't want you drinking water that is from necessarily from the tap. Has a lot of chlorine in it. If that's the only water that's available to you, at least take the water and put it on the counter overnight, and the chlorine molecules will evaporate out of there. And you don't want to be using a carbonated water, because carbonated water has a tendency to make your cells stick together, which is going to make you feel tired, and it's going to put more pressure on the heart too, because everything's stuck together. So a lot of these drinks today, if they're filled with all these natural flavorings, it's actually monosodium glutamate. So be careful of that. I stay away from all of that. Occasionally I'll have a Perrier or San Pellegrino, but that's pretty much it. But clean filtered water, and you want to make sure. And it's hard in the wintertime to get all that water, but make an effort to do that, because you'll feel a lot better and your blood pressure will drop once you start drinking the water as well. And lastly, on the metabolic balance program, you have to have 1 apple a day. Why? Because there is no other fruit that lowers your cholesterol, that lowers your uric acid than an apple. Apples also, that old saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. The apples definitely are full of phytonutrients. They have this pectin that goes and takes that toxins out of your system. Remember, we were talking about your liver. It needs to be the organ of detoxification. You want to make sure that you've got some fiber to grab it in the large intestine to be taken out of the body, so that you can maintain a healthy body and a healthy blood pressure. So when a person has their intake done and when they get their blood values done at the lab, then this information again is sent over to Germany, and then the customized, individualized plan is created to manage their insulin, to manage their blood pressure, and any other health conditions that they have. And typically, they're going to get back a program that's going to look similar to this. Now, the beauty of the Metabolic Balance Program, it's been around for years. We've done over, I think, 2 million programs have been created in the world right now. And it takes into consideration the food for each country. So obviously the food in China is going to be different than the food in Canada, and very readily available for each person. So you'll notice that each person who does a customized, individualized metabolic balance program is going to get 3 breakfasts, 3 lunches, and 3 dinners. And the reason that there's numbers beside it, it's an exact science of protein, fats, and carbs. So this combination of food has been created for this individual to help manage their blood pressure. So this individual has 225 grams of yogurt, and then in the following pages, there's a list of what type of yogurt this person has. And typically it's around 3.8% fat. Why? You never want to have low fat anything, because low fat is not going to make you feel satisfied. It's not going to stabilize insulin. Remember that we're trying to flatline your sugars all day. And when you're eating all day, your sugars are just spiking up and down. By having this yogurt, this fruit, and this bread together, you get the right amounts of protein, fats, and carbs. So that is a perfect balance of glycemic index or glycemic load that's going to make you feel satisfied and not crave, and help you to manage the blood pressure. And fruit. You can see even on this program here, this individual's got 2 fruits a day. One of these must be a fruit. And across the world, everybody gets mangoes, papayas, apples, and then they'll get other ones. Why? Because mangoes and papayas are very healing to the gut. They're very loaded with nutrients and minerals. And then lastly, we have bread. And the only bread that people have on this program is 100% rye bread. So there's no other bread. Personally, the only bread I eat is 100% rye bread. It is that dense German bread, and you may not necessarily like the taste of it, but if you toast it, it tastes fantastic. You can also use a rye Vita cracker, because it too has a low glycemic index. And when you eat a piece of this bread with this yogurt, you are going to feel so full that your cravings for other food mid-morning will diminish. And she's got, or I can't remember if this is a male or female, she's got cheese, vegetables, fruit, and bread, meat, vegetables. So on the following pages for each person's individualized, customized program, they have a list. So each individual have a list of vegetables, They'll have a list of fruits. They'll have a list of legumes. If there is things with high cholesterol or high uric acid, a lot of these foods are taken off. The beauty of the program also is that if you have any dietary restrictions or you can't stand eating sardines, we certainly can take that off your plan. But there's nothing on this list that I've worked with my clients that a client has not been able to find. Might be some interesting vegetables and fruit, but generally speaking, it's a pretty easy program. So that's kind of where we get with that. So it's simply real food. It's perfect for you. There's no pills, there's no supplements, there's no shakes, and there's no cravings. It's delicious and easy. So a typical breakfast for me might be almonds and sunflower seeds with avocados and an apple. Lunch might be chickpeas with tomatoes, green onions, mixed with mango, balsamic vinegar, and olive oil. Although in the first 16 days of a person's program, what we do is we take out the fat so we can change the metabolism of the person so that we can get their body back into balance. And then we add the fat back in after 16 days. So 2 days we do a little bit of a cleanse, and then 14 days minimum exercise because the body's trying to detox and correct itself. My experience with high blood pressure and people on the program, within the first couple of days, their blood pressure starts to drop. So we do monitor this with a doctor. They have to go back and get their blood pressure checked. It can also go up, I'm going to say, because the body's detoxing. I've seen a little bit of blood pressure going up, but predominantly the blood pressure comes down. So you do have to monitor that with their family physician, or they will, because now once you change the diet, once you're changing how your cells are being nourished, it really, really can affect the blood pressure. So it's an incredible program for helping you to lower the blood pressure, to reduce the visceral fat. So again, I kind of just want to summarize everything. We know that blood pressure is a disease. We know that there's a lot of risk factors involved. We know that there's things that we can do today to eliminate it. But the primary reason why we have this high blood pressure is due to the fact that we have this visceral fat around the tummy, which measures more than 40 inches for a male, 35 inches for a female. And that visceral fat is putting something in your system called cytokines, which are inflammatory things that raise your blood pressure. When a person does a metabolic balance program that takes a look at their full health history, that takes a look at their blood values at the lab, combine that together, this program is created in Germany, and then I become your coach. This coaching works incredibly well because each person who's managing any of these symptoms needs this personal guidance along the way. We measure you, we weigh you, we monitor that. We have a doctor here in Canada that overlooks all of our blood work. As a coach, I'm in constant communication with him. If we have any problems, we literally just give him a call or email him, and he's right on top of us getting back to us. So it's an incredible program. I've helped so many people with this high blood pressure, and I really hope that this can be something that would be value to you. So what I wanted to do right now was to open it up. I just want to check my time. I wanted to basically open it up, and if you would like to, you can unmute yourself, and I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions. And I apologize for speaking fast. I always do that. I just have this, feel like I have this wealth of knowledge that wants to come out of me all the time, and I hope you're able to. We are going to get a recording of this afterwards, so you can go back and listen to that. But please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions, and I would be happy to answer them.
Hi, Jane. Adele here.
Hi, Adele. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great.
I have a question about apple a day. Does it matter what type of apple you eat?
Yes, you want to have a tart apple. So the best apples that are indicated with Metabolic Balance Program are Macintosh, Granny Smith, Ida Red, Jonathan, Gravensteiner, or Brayburn. And recently, Metabolic Balance Germany has added a few new ones to that as of this week, which would be Red Delicious, Gala, and I forget, but yeah, you want the ones that are tart. So you don't really want to have the Honeycrisp because that's just too high in sugar.
The golden